Dear church, let's talk about shepherds. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. My good friend, one of my shepherds here at Walnut Street, Scott Woodard's with us. Scott, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Thanks for the invite.
We're recording in the morning and you've got work and everything ahead of you. You've got a senior that's about to graduate playing soccer, so your nights are busy and things are going pretty rapidly in your life. Taking time to be with us, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So we're doing a series on elders, and we had Bob Spencer on last week talking about kind of the blessings and the challenges of being a shepherd. And I wanted to talk with you more about kind of the qualifications and not so much the biblical qualifications. Those are important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to diminish that. Obviously, if they don't meet those qualifications, they're out. But I want to talk more in depth about some of the things that go into making a great shepherd that kind of go beyond or maybe are tied to the qualifications. Before we do that, though, I kind of want to ask you, tell a little bit about yourself first, and then I want to go from there and talk about kind of what went into the decision for you to be an elder here at Walnut Street.
Sure. So I've actually lived here in Dixon my entire life. Pretty much have grown up here, and which has been quite a few years now, actually. But I've actually worshiped here at Walnut Street, except the time when I was away for school. This is where I grew up. So I think that's somewhat unique. But met my wife. She's from Dixon as well. You mentioned one of our kids. We have 3 kids, and they're all early 20s or late teens. So like you said, a whole lot going on.
Yeah. And so when they approached you about because you're one of our younger elders, right? So when they approached you about becoming an elder, what went into that decision? I imagine there was probably we talked about last week, if there's not a little bit of reservation, then it's probably not a good thing,
Right. And there was a lot of reservation. Yeah, it's something that through the years I've certainly thought about and kind of gone back and forth about whether I felt like it was something that I could do and do well. And certainly when they asked, all of that thought process that had run through my mind over the years really came together all at once, right? And so that it was an interesting time, but it took a lot of thought. And I would go back and forth during that time trying to decide whether it was something that I should take on. I certainly, like you said, it wasn't something I felt like necessarily I should or could do, but at the same time, it was something I felt like I should and could do. Right. So it was a process, and so it just involved a lot of focused thought. Of course, a lot of prayer and a lot of study and thinking through that. And then I would go back and forth and trying to make the decision. But, certainly made the decision, obviously, to take on the challenge. And it's certainly been a challenge, but also very rewarding at the same time.
Were there conversations with Karen, your wife, and what were those discussions like?
Yeah, absolutely there were. We spent a good bit of time talking about it. And, I would, like I said, I would spend time thinking about it and then come back and talk with her, and we would go through that process. And, she right out of the gate said, I support you.
Good. And
there was never any wavering in that whatsoever. So from that perspective, it was an amazing thing, because that's basically the first thing she told me.
Yeah.
Is
well, when you lead with that, that's pretty
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when this was brought to you, you're trying to make the decision. You finally do make the decision, or maybe right before you make the decision. What was your biggest fear? Like, what did you feel like was the biggest reservation for you?
That's a good question. As far as the biggest reservation, one thing that I did spend a lot of time thinking about is I wanted to make sure that I spent the time necessary to serve in the position in the right way. Because today I don't feel like I sufficiently spend the time that I should, but I don't know that I would ever feel that way. I think
agree.
it's something that I will always feel. So, but to me, that's one of the biggest challenges, if not, is just the feeling of I feel like I need and could and should do more.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's a help or a hindrance that you grew up here? And that, I mean, you were in the youth group with Bob Spencer, who's been our youth minister with Alan Reagan. You were in that youth group, and now you're serving alongside him as one of the elders. Is that a help or a hindrance?
I think it's both. I think for me, and I think for what I can bring to our group, I think it's a help because I think that I do have a perspective because I've always been here, and I've had, that's something that helped me a lot too, by the way, is just being able to observe the elders here and the leadership that they demonstrated and the things, the decisions, the way they led. So to me, I think it was a help from that perspective, just to have an understanding and a history. And growing up here, like you said, part of the youth group here, it has been such an integral part of this family for so long. Yeah. And Bob has done such an exceptional job of leading that. It's a blessing. It was a blessing.
That prepared you for the eldership?
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that it had a significant impact on my preparation, just being a part of that. And at the time when I was just part of the youth group, did I see that? No. No. But do I realize it now? Absolutely. It was a very important part of me being or becoming prepared.
That's really neat. So when we talk about qualities of an effective elder or shepherd, what do you see as maybe the main characteristics or traits that the congregation should be looking for when we're appointing elders?
Yeah. Now, obviously, like you said, we want to go and see exactly what we're instructed to look for in those things. That's really the first place to start. But
sure.
Certainly feel like I think as we're looking for new elders, just to be looking for observing the individuals that one might consider for that position, just observing how they live their lives in the Word, how they exhibit God's Word in the way that they live, their ability to have compassion on others around them, the ability to listen to what others have to say, and then being able to communicate effectively is important. But the main thing is just they love the Lord and they truly are striving in their lives to exhibit the love of the Lord in the way that they live their lives.
Yeah, that's really important. We've said that as we're putting together a staff here at Walnut Street. I kind of came in at a spot where the elders decided we're going to add more staff, not just a preacher, but Bob and Alan are kind of stepping away from the youth group after many, many years. And so we're hiring a full-time youth minister and a connections minister and all that. And one of the things I've always said is when you're hiring staff, first and foremost, are they passionate about the ministry and about the Lord? Because that's first and foremost. The rest of it, you can get a job for them to do. But are they passionate? I think that's true with elders as well. I mean, are they passionate about the Lord and His church and serving Him to the best of their ability? And then humility, of course, would be one of those. But I think a character trait that we don't often emphasize is, are they Spirit-filled and Spirit-led? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Do they exhibit that in their lives because they're filled with the Spirit, led by the Spirit? And I think all too often we just kind of don't really consider that. But you have a guy that meets the qualifications, but he's not joyful. Yeah. Or you have a guy that's biblically qualified, but he doesn't love in the way that he should, or he doesn't exhibit faithfulness. I don't want a joyless elder. I don't want somebody leading us that's, seems like he was baptized in lemon juice, right? You want somebody that exhibits those qualities as well, don't you?
Absolutely, you do. Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. And sometimes it's hard to demonstrate that joy. We don't always feel that, right? But at the same time, I think you're right. I think it's important to see that. And we can have joy even if we may not be happy sometimes.
Yeah, right. Have you, overall in your time, so how long have you served as a shepherd here?
It's not quite 2 years.
Okay. So you're still kind of a rookie at this,
Absolutely,
I
guess. I am. I'm learning.
Did you come in and just kind of sit and observe, or was that your strategy? And now that you've been doing this for a little while, what has been kind of the biggest challenge and the biggest blessing?
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily had a strategy, but I did. I did try to, and I think you kind of have to do that. You have to just sit and observe and learn how the process works and how the discussions go and things like that. So certainly did that, but pretty quickly. And the elders made a point to all of us. There were 4 of us that were appointed as new elders at the same time, and for all of us, we were highly encouraged not to sit too long, right, and just observe, but be active participants. And so we've all, I believe, done that and tried to do that, and I've certainly tried to do that. And where I feel like there is an area where I can contribute, certainly try to do that.
Yeah. This is a unique situation in that you've had, a handful of the elders that you're serving with, you went to school with. You were in the youth group with. You graduated high school with. You've known all your life. Talk about that dynamic. That's got to be kind of cool.
It's very cool. Yeah, I love it. It is, again, probably unique, but it's been a blessing too, right? Because we already know each other so well, and so you're able to take advantage of that, what you know already, and hopefully do things even that much better.
Yeah, there's already a chemistry there.
Right.
Y'all seem to get along. It's funny. My first experience with the eldership here, I think we laughed and cut up just as much as we were serious. You guys know when to get down to business, but y'all have a lot of fun too. And I think that's a key, right?
I think it's very important.
You got to be able to let your hair down. As a coach, I had a very small circle of friends. And the reason why is because it seemed like so many people that you would maybe reach out to and be friends with would end up stabbing you in the back, right? And so you kept a very small circle of people you could trust and confide in. And as a preacher, it's not quite that way. But there are a core group of people as a preacher that I always keep close because I know that I can just be myself. I don't have to be in preacher mode and all that. And to have that in the eldership, it's even better, right?
It's a special thing. And of course, I've never been in an eldership, and only been in one for not even 2 years, right. But I do believe it's special. And you mentioned Bob Spencer, that's something that Bob has said for many years is the special relationship that this eldership has had for a long time. And I always heard him talk about that. And now that I'm in a position where I can actually experience it myself, it's very special. And we have the ability to laugh, to cry, and like you said, not have to be serious all the time. And I think it's important to do that. I think it builds a even stronger bond between us, so that if we're able to laugh together, it helps us be able to focus on important things together, know that we have each other's back. Again, obviously the main thing is that we need to be led, as you said, by the Spirit, and make sure that we're doing things according to God's word and the way that He wants us to, and to know that we have a group, as a group, we're able to function together in that way is special.
Yeah, when your foundation is strong relationship to each other and to the Word. It's always been interesting to me to watch when you appoint elders. It's been my experience, a man that is vying for that position, that really, really wants it so badly that he politics for it or whatever, that's not the guy you want, right? But at the same time, you kind of want the guy to want the job, right? It's kind of like, we don't want you to want it too much,
right?
But we certainly want you to want it. And I think about Moses, I think about Gideon, reluctant leaders, and I hear that sometimes from men that are being approached about the eldership. I just don't desire the office. And I think, I get that, but at the same time, neither did Moses and neither did Gideon. But God used those reluctant leaders. And so maybe God's calling you to something that whether you like it or not, maybe you should do it because you have some sort of qualities that will lend itself to helping the eldership, and they see that. And all that. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, because I know you had some reservations about coming into the eldership, and do you finally default to, what, they see something in me, God, I prayed about it, God sees something in me, so maybe I don't feel totally qualified, but I got to do it.
I think that's well said. Yeah, and it is. It was for me, and I can speak for me. It wasn't something. Now, again, I said, I thought about it over the years and about the potential, but it is. It's challenging because it is something that I did desire in a way, but at the same time, I never felt like that I was there.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared. I wasn't to that point where I was prepared for that. And so that, I think that's why it was such a thought process that went into the decision, is because, it's, well, I'm not there yet. And then you say, well, when are you going to get there? Right. And so there was a lot of that kind of going back and forth. And so certainly something in some ways I wanted to do, and then in others that I didn't, because it is also, it's a big responsibility. And it has to be taken very seriously. And I know to a man that it is taken very seriously by everyone. So, but it is kind of a paradox, right?
It is.
With the way you look at it.
Has it grounded you or centered you to say, I know you've always put a premium on living a resurrected life, being the child of God that you're supposed to be. We all fall short of that, but that's our goal every day. Has it focused you even more on that? Like, I'm an elder. Like, I've got to make sure, I'll give you this example. I've been helping the baseball team because my wife's not here. And I think I've talked about that ad nauseum when people are getting sick here. But so to fill my time, Rodney Parker, the high school baseball coach, asked me to help out. And so I've been out there. And the other day I'm coaching first base, and the umpire makes a call that, a lot of people didn't agree with, right? But it was in our favor. So I was, fine with it. Later on, he makes a call that wasn't in our favor. And so, you think about when I was a coach, I probably would have argued and everything else. I let it go. And, it's not that big a deal. I'm getting older, more mature, hopefully. And so it's not that big a deal. I go out there in between innings and I'm talking to the umpire, and he starts mentioning my sermon Sunday and about, going into detail about this and that. Well, being a new guy in town, I didn't realize he goes to church here, and I thought, I really could have put myself in a bad position if I'd have gone out there and, argued the call and all that. And you just realize somebody's always watching, somebody's always attached to, maybe what you're attached to or whatever it is. And so it really brings into focus, you better mind your P's and Q's because somebody's always watching. And so do you find that focuses you more now that you're an elder?
Absolutely.
I better pay attention to what I'm doing.
It does. It does. And it's, it's not a bad thing, right?
No.
It's actually good, but it certainly does not just enter your mind, but I think stay in your mind all the time that, it's a very important thing, because there are folks there are always folks that are watching, but even more so now, it's important that the decisions and the actions are well thought out, and you don't want to do something that's going to be looked or actually cause any kind of negativity to come on the church.
Yeah, you don't want to harm your influence. A lot of times, it seems like in the church we choose elders because they're good businessmen, right? They're good in the business world, and so that they can bring that prowess or that expertise over into the eldership. But I have discovered, I'm sure you have as well, that's not always the case. What makes you good in business doesn't always make you good as an elder, because a lot of times in the business world, it's my way or the highway. You get successful because you've done it your way, you've implemented your plan, and at all costs maybe. But in the eldership, it's not that way, because you're over a volunteer organization. Everybody gets a vote, which is kind of crazy. So talk about that, the difference in, I know you're in the engineering field, right? And so talk about the difference in, leading in the secular world versus leading in the church.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, a business is in business to make a profit.
Yeah.
So decisions are made to assure that there is a profit that is earned.
Yeah.
And if there's not a profit earned, then the business won't exist.
Yeah.
Right. So, but at the same time, well, and I guess to finish that thought, the church is here truly to make Christians, for us to be Christians, for us to be a part of God's family, to follow God. So there's a difference in the intent. Now, in business, at the same time, this is where I was going. If the focus is completely on making a profit, eventually that business is going to fail, because you also have to make sure you're taking care of the people. So from that perspective, if it's a complete focus from a business standpoint on the profit, you're still eventually not going to be successful. But it is there to make a profit. So there are some qualities that I think that are good from a business perspective, and I think that's what some people see as a good business leader. Hey, they could be successful. They see some of those qualities that are good because they can lead successfully. So parts of that can be good. But it's certainly different from a perspective of leading in the church, because it is truly focused on the people, on our members. And it is a complete focus on that, and leading all of us to follow Christ, to be Christ-like in our lives. So to me, that's the biggest difference in the two. I think there's good that can be brought from the secular world from a leadership standpoint, but the focus is really truly different. The primary focus, I'll call it, is on people, not on profit.
It's a good point. Yeah, I like how you put that. I hadn't really thought about it, although it's simple as, Christ is the difference. And, a lot of times Jesus didn't come into the equation in a business and turn a profit. And here, that's what it's all about. So I like that. What would you say to a young man? I mean, you've got a young man in your house about to graduate. What would you say to a young man who exhibits some leadership qualities, and maybe you, as a talent evaluator, you see that he could be a great leader in the church someday? What do you say to encourage that as an elder now, to encourage a young man, maybe not even young, but maybe somebody that's close, to get them kind of prepared for the eldership? What would you say to them?
One of the main things I would suggest is that they find a way to involve themselves in the church, and not sit back and wait and hope for someone to ask them to take on some role. That's something I think that a lot, I know that I did for a long time. You sit and wait and think, well, they'll ask me to come and do this and take on this leadership role. And they may very well, but don't wait for that. Look for an opportunity. Look for something that you enjoy doing and get involved. Go and actually say, hey, I would love to take a leadership role in doing this, whatever it may be.
Be a self-starter.
Be a self-starter. Take that on and run with it. And if it's something that you enjoy, you're going to want to do it even more. So do that, be successful in it, and it will continue to help you prepare for that.
Yeah, I think too often we present, preaching this way too, but we present the eldership, I say we, just the church in general, tends to perceive, because the eldership is presented as, well, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. I mean, what would you say to that as far as, like, you're almost 2 years in? Certainly, you have seen difficult situations and hard decisions that have to be made. But if you wrapped it all up and you said, hey, this is worthy because of why?
Because it's the work of the church. It's God's plan. It's what He has put in place. It's how He's organized us as His people. And so that makes it worthy. And it makes it a blessing to be a part of what God has prepared. So to me, it's I'm thankful for the opportunity every day that I have that opportunity to serve. And I need to grow, and I need to be better, and I want to be better. And I want to always feel that way. I know I can be. But every day that I'm allowed to do it, it's a blessing.
Yeah. You get to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
That's it.
Neat. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning. Scott, thank you for being here and taking time out of your schedule to be with us.
Absolutely.
And I want to tell all our listeners and viewers, if you have a question for me or for Scott, you can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. If the question is specifically for Scott, then we'll make sure that he gets it. I'm sure you'll be willing to answer any question.
Sure.
And we just appreciate you tuning in. Share the news about the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, and the other platforms. Let people know. Keep tuning in, and thank you so much. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.